ability to hear is important to us in many ways. It gives us pleasure, for example, by listening to music. It enables us to better protect ourselves by letting us hear sounds that can indicate the presence of potential dangers. But by far the most important aspect of our hearing is the ability it gives us to hear other people speak. It enables us to interact with people, to listen, to learn, and to easily communicate. Our ability to hear can be affected by a number of things. Birth defects, exposure to certain illnesses and diseases, blows to the head, exposure to some hazardous substances, the aging process, and of course by exposure to excessive amounts of noise. Now, of all these potential causes of hearing loss, the most common, and indeed the one which we can most readily address, is the one resulting from exposure to noise, commonly referred to as noise-induced hearing loss. We are all constantly exposed to noise, most of which has no adverse effect on our hearing. But we are probably all familiar with the temporary partial loss of hearing experienced after attending a noisy event or leaving a noisy place. It is difficult to hear and is often accompanied by a ringing or buzzing noise in the ears. With a temporary hearing loss, our hearing will gradually return to normal, usually within a few hours. Any temporary hearing loss should be regarded as a warning signal. Permanent noise-induced hearing loss can occur in two ways. First, from ongoing or repeated exposure to high noise levels, often over a period of months or years. And second, from short-term exposure to very high noise levels, which can lead to immediate damage. The effects of permanent noise-induced hearing loss can range from mild to severe, and will get worse if exposure to unsafe noise levels continues. Permanent noise-induced hearing loss can occur to anyone at any age, and once the damage is done, it cannot be repaired. But the most important fact about noise-induced hearing loss is that it is preventable. In simple terms, the ear works as sound waves pass from the outer ear and cause vibrations to occur at the eardrum. The eardrum and the three small bones of the middle ear amplify the vibrations and they travel to the inner ear. They pass through the cochlea, which contains fluid and nerve cells. Attached to the nerve cells in the cochlea are thousands of tiny hairs that convert the sound vibrations into electrical signals. These signals are then transmitted to the brain and interpreted as sound. The vibrations of different sounds affect these tiny hairs in different ways and therefore produce different signals that are sent to the brain. These variations in the electrical signals enable us to distinguish different sounds. Permanent noise-induced hearing loss occurs when these tiny hairs in the cochlea are damaged. Once bent, broken, or destroyed, they will not function or not function effectively, and permanent hearing loss will occur. The extent of the hearing loss being closely related to the amount of damage to these tiny hairs. Sounds are vibrations that move through substances such as air and water as sound waves. All sound waves have two characteristics: their amplitude, which determines the loudness of the sound, and their frequency, which determines the tone or pitch of the sound. Loudness, sometimes referred to as sound level or sound intensity, is measured in decibels. A whisper has a sound level of about 20 decibels. Normal conversational speech is around 60 decibels, and a pneumatic drill is commonly over 110. Discomfort occurs at 120 decibels, and pain can be felt at around 140 decibels. Frequency is measured in hertz. The number of hertz is the number of cycles that occur every second. Noise is a combination of sounds of different frequencies and of varying levels of intensity or volume. An average young person with unimpaired hearing can hear sounds of sufficient intensity or volume in the frequency range of approximately 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. Inaudible sounds with frequencies below 20 Hz are referred to as infrasonic, and those with frequencies above 20,000 Hz are called ultrasonic. The most sensitive range for our hearing is between 500 and 5,000 Hz, with optimum sensitivity generally around the 4,000 Hz level. Importantly, normal speech occurs in the frequency range of 200 Hz to 8,000 Hz. It is therefore this frequency range which gives us the most important aspect of our hearing, our ability to hear other people speak. The hearing test is an important tool in dealing with noise issues. It measures your ability to hear the human voice. It is used for a number of different reasons. First, it will identify if you have a hearing problem and establish a benchmark or baseline of your hearing ability. Second, if conducted on a regular basis, it will show any deterioration in your hearing ability. And third, in the workplace, it can be used for comparison with others who have been exposed to similar noise levels. The procedure is simple. Each ear is separately exposed to sounds with different frequency levels, commonly between 500 and 8,000 Hz. For each tone, the volume is gradually adjusted until the threshold level is found. This is the lowest volume level where you are able to reliably detect the presence of the sound. With this information, a graph called an audiogram is produced. It will show separate results for each ear. A person with unimpaired hearing will generate an audiogram for each ear that looks something like this. It shows that unimpaired hearing will allow hearing of all the tested frequency sounds below a level of 20 decibels. So, in other words, all the speech frequencies can be heard at relatively low levels of volume. A graph like this represents a person with some degree of hearing loss. It shows that increased sound levels are required for the tones to be heard, and that around the 4,000 Hz level, the volume is in excess of 60 decibels, significantly louder than for a person with unimpaired hearing. This third audiogram shows a person with significant hearing loss. Now, if we are to assume that you have normal, unimpaired hearing, what I'm presently saying should be clear and easy to understand. Early signs of noise-induced hearing loss would change the quality of what you hear, and it would sound more like this. It is still easy to hear, but is not quite so clear. Severe hearing loss would sound something like this, and if combined with some normal background noise, it becomes extremely difficult to understand anything that is being said. It is important to understand that with the onset of noise-induced hearing loss, our ability to distinguish everyday speech starts to diminish. And if unsafe exposure continues, the hearing loss will get progressively worse. In many cases, simply increasing the sound level will not significantly improve the ability to hear these sounds. Noise-induced hearing loss is commonly associated with noise hazards in the workplace, but it is not exclusively a workplace issue. Both recreational and domestic activities can cause noise-induced hearing loss. Live music events, sporting activities such as motor racing, and use of items such as lawnmowers, power tools, and chainsaws are all examples of activities that present potential noise hazards. Clearly, the same principles that are used to address and control noise hazards in the workplace should also be applied by individuals who are exposed to noise hazards outside of the workplace. In the workplace, there are loud and sharp noises, impact noises, and what could be described as ordinary noise. which is present for long periods of time. For example, general factory noise. Noise in the workplace is addressed by limiting people to what is regarded as an acceptable level of daily noise exposure. It is the employer's responsibility to conduct a risk assessment to identify where noise hazards may be a problem and to make reliable and justifiable estimates of exposure levels for anyone who may be at risk. Decisions must be made, including whether noise levels are reasonable and comply with the law, and indeed whether noise control measures are needed or hearing protection is required. Noise control measures are many and varied, and include use of soundproofing materials, barriers, and enclosures, moving noisy equipment to more suitable locations, conducting regular maintenance on equipment and machinery, use of silencers, mufflers, and vibration control measures, and reducing the time individuals are exposed to particular noise hazards. As an individual exposed to noise in the workplace, you should be proactive. If you work in an area for extended time periods where you need to raise your voice to be heard, you're probably putting your hearing at risk if you are not using some form of hearing protection. Hearing protection should be worn only when necessary and should be sufficient to reduce noise to an acceptable or safe level, not to reduce noise levels to the point of creating a feeling of isolation. Hearing protection must be worn in areas that have been identified as hearing protection zones and for job tasks that have been identified as requiring hearing protection. Hearing protection comes in two forms: earplugs and earmuffs. Earplugs come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and materials. It is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions on their proper use. With the standard type compressible earplug, roll the plug slowly into a thin, smooth cylinder. Reach over your head and take hold of the back of your ear about halfway down. Gently pull your ear outwards and upwards to straighten your ear canal. Insert about 3/4 of the length of the compressed plug into your ear canal and hold it in place until it begins to expand. With ear muffs, the first thing to do is to make sure they are worn the right way around. Some are marked with front. Extend the headband to its maximum. If necessary, remove jewelry and brush hair away from the ears. Place the muffs over the ears, making sure there is enough room inside the muffs so the ears are not squashed. Adjust the headband so it takes the weight of the cups and holds them in place. Run your fingers around the cushion to check the seal and adjust if necessary. Differences in size and shape of people's heads and ears, and the wearing of hard hats, face shields, and glasses often makes the selection of appropriate ear muffs somewhat difficult. What suits one person may very well not suit another. Poor hearing can dramatically change your lifestyle. It can lead to misunderstandings. It can give other people an impression of rudeness or even a lack of intelligence. It can make you more vulnerable to accidents and injuries. It can limit employment opportunities, and it can lead to social isolation. Noise-induced hearing loss is preventable. We should not take our hearing for granted, and we should all take appropriate steps to protect our hearing whenever and wherever it may be at risk. Remember, you only have one chance to look after your hearing. Once your hearing is damaged, it is damaged forever.